This is the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
The biggest icon in podcasting.
Welcome in, everybody, to this week's edition of Doc and Jock. I am the Doc, John Macaroon. Joining me, my cousin Adam, the Jock Strozinski. Man, it is so much better to broadcast when the weather's so nice. I've gotten so much sun in the last 4 days. Just put me in a much better mood, better able to deal with whatever the hell's going on in baseball, whatever the hell's going on with our Detroit teams. The sun has just made everybody just a little bit calmer, a little bit nicer, getting out and about. My wife and I went to a restaurant on Monday. It was a little bit weird. We were the only ones wearing masks, but be damned. I don't care. I'm taking extra precautions. We are going to live our lives, but I'm going to have a little bit of safety going on. I wore my black mask, and everyone, it just kind of is, for me, it's just a little bit more unusual to see all the staffers wearing the masks everywhere you go. But look, Michigan's done a great job. It looks like Michigan's leading the way in terms of, the number of new cases. So kudos to the residents of Michigan. It seems like we've done a good job at least allowing us to get back to normal life. So it's a little bit weird, but life is getting back to normal, and it's finally just feeling like, okay, we can live our lives, do whatever, get outside. Wear a mask is kind of like just a little bit of extra precaution. So I'm loving life right now, man. Enjoying this week, a beautiful week in June.
Yeah, dude, it's lovely outside. It's so hot right now. I mean, I just walked into my condo and I didn't have my air on, and I'm roasting in here. That's how nice and warm it is right now. I'm a little bit bummed that they're not going to open my pool this year. They're using that awesome loophole of a pandemic to not open my pool, but that's beside the point. But you're right. The weather is nice. It is great to be broadcasting with you during this lovely summer. And look, man, we've got a fantastic show lined up. It's summertime, but we might not get our midsummer classic. Baseball's a complete and utter embarrassment right now. These fans on Twitter are kind of embarrassing. They don't want Cap or Cam. And we're going to talk a little bit about Jim Harbaugh maybe being a QB whisperer. We've got a fantastic show lined up.
Absolutely, man. Loving being part of this broadcast network, the Detroit Sports Podcast. Gives us a chance to turn on the microphone. I love the fact that our supporters let us keep the studio lights on. The microphone's hot here in our Sterling Heights studio, man. It's good stuff. But yeah, absolutely. Baseball, and it's so true. Just look at how I'll share my experience with the Tigers. I cover the Tigers as part of the podcast. I'm a credentialed media member. I can go down to the games. Now, remember, the Detroit Tigers possess the number 1 overall draft pick in the Major League Baseball draft. So you would think the night of the draft, they're going to be all over local coverage, right? Well, other local media are sending out requests. Hey, can the general manager, can anybody talk to us? The only thing that we saw was obviously Al Avila and Spencer Torkelson have a discussion on ESPN, but nothing else locally. So I'm like, oh, well, maybe, it's going to happen like at 10 or 11. I've been part of a lot of late night situations. So I shoot an email to the PR staff and I'm like, hey, it's 9:15. I'm like, hey, if there's going to be a meeting in regards to the number 1 overall draft pick, can I be involved in it if it hasn't happened yet? Nothing. Radio silence. Nothing happens. I'm like, oh, they're not going to include me. Whatever. There's probably 200 media members. It's okay. It's not a big deal. This will be made available. Someone will cover it. Because I want to see, okay, Spencer Torkelson's going to be part of the Tigers. So what happens? The next day it happens at 1. The Tigers do not reply to me until afterwards. They did send me the footage, but they go, oh, sorry, we didn't include you on this. And then they replied to me after the fact and sent it to me. But the local media said that the night the Detroit Tigers draft a number 1 overall pick, the Tigers made nobody available locally. What kind of situation is this? Even the Lions make people available when there's news. And the Lions, could do a little bit better here and there. But the Tigers absolutely are acting in a manner as if, oh, we're baseball and we don't need no coverage. You know what? This is 2020. If you're not going to promote the sport, it's going to go away. And for the Detroit Tigers possessing the number 1 overall pick, they acted in such a manner that everything was secret, didn't even make anybody available. Remember that the media is a way to pump up your team that's not that good. So when you do stuff like that, it makes people get upset. And while, yes, I'm always cordial and things like that, that's annoying. You don't have to include me. Just say, oh, sorry, we got two. Because it looked like, he went, Torkelson spoke from 1 to like 1:30. It seemed like everybody was asking questions, like maybe 30 people. But, if you don't want to have me, just tell me. Don't do it after the fact. You know what I mean? Because I'm nice about it and I never raise a stink doesn't mean you keep jacking me and don't allow a media outlet to come on and at least be part of it. You could even tell me. I don't care if you say, hey, we'll let you on. Just don't ask any questions. We got 40 people ahead of you. I don't care with that, but to ignore it, and baseball, like someone said online, acts in the manner as if they do the least amount of publicity possible in a sport that's dying. It makes no sense. And to our topic, to our point, the fact that to this day, when we're recording, they don't have a deal yet, they should have been at the forefront of this. They should have been the first sport back, potentially this weekend, getting back at it and letting people see something with baseball. But no, they're potentially willing to kill the golden goose. Maybe there's a season, but I don't care about a 60-game season. There should have been a 100-game season. There should have been a lot more done. But the argument back and forth between the owners really turned me off. And for me, if there's no season, so be it. I don't care.
Baseball is the greediest sport out there.
Yeah.
It's disgusting because the owners don't want to pay the players because they're not going to be able to have fans, or they can't guarantee that they're going to have fans. They just signed a multi-billion-dollar television deal that keeps them laced and keeps their pockets fat for, I think, the next 2 or 3 years. It's absolutely disgusting what's going on with baseball right now. There were 2 owners who basically said that they do not want to even consider having a season because they want to take some of that power away from the players. Like, that is unreal to me. You basically want to kill the golden goose because you want to be able to hoard either more money or you want to be able to hoard more power. All the players want is parts of their contract. That's it. And they just want to go play baseball games. The owners are saying, look, we don't want to pay you any money because we're not going to be able to get that extra income from having fans in the stands. We can't guarantee that we'll actually have fans sitting in seats. So because of that, you have to share in our misery. The thing is, when the television deals get cut, when the revenue sharing gets all played out, they don't share any of that money with the players. The baseball owners are disgusting to me. Absolutely disgusting the way that they are going about this. All the players want, and look, the thing that I think gets lost in all of this is the Major League Baseball Players Union and the players agreed already to a deal before we even got this far. They said, yeah, we're willing to go ahead and we're willing to play this many games and we're willing to take this much of a pay cut. Let's just get things going. Let's get things underway. And now baseball and Rob Manfred, who I think is just awful. He is one of the worst commissioners in sports. I know we crucify Gary Bettman, and rightfully so, but Gary Bettman is even better than this clown. Major League Baseball has had some of the worst commissioners of all time. I mean, I know Roger Goodell constantly steps in shit and then puts it in his own mouth, but even Roger Goodell is better than Rob Manfred. Rob Manfred is such an ass clown. He's just made this so much worse than it needed to be. Baseball should be starting, if not this week, maybe next week. 4th of July at the absolute latest, we should have a season getting underway. And at this point, it looks like maybe late July, early August. Like, what's going on here? The owners and the commissioner have screwed this up royally, and it's all over greed. It's disgusting to me.
It's unbelievable in that, yeah, there was a deal met. And so now you recognize that Rob Manfred, who works for the owners, has to come out and be like, oh, we got to stand by and not let the players jerk us around. It's a lot of posturing. And if you're anywhere near negotiating, you just don't want to be made to look like you're the weaker party. And so because of the fact that Major League Baseball, after the last deal was sent to them, he said, look, just tell us where and when. And the owners took offense to that. And so then now finally, it looks like Manfred and Tony Clark sat in a room potentially on Tuesday evening and hashed out something. Maybe there's a deal in place. But the thing that I don't like is now you're going to get like this weird bastardized version of a 16-team Major League Baseball playoff. It's just... I'm not happy with it. I just think it's a silly idea because of how this has worked, and you just get a weird season. So for me, at this point in time, the way in which you've handled it, you've turned everybody off. You've not handled yourself professionally, and it's a situation in which leadership needed Baseball, the owners and the players needed to get together quickly, hash out this deal a lot sooner so that they could be ahead of the game. I mean, basketball is ahead of the curve in this situation in terms of at least having a plan. Hockey had a plan out. Major League Baseball back and forth. This was probably, cause the worst time to have a labor dispute. The worst time when the country needed to be unified. You could have been the leaders at the forefront of starting a sport. And in terms of PR too, you know how much damage it does to the media, it does to local podcasts, what it does to those covering the amount of revenue loss. Look, the pandemic is not good for anybody, but you can't tell me that you can't have 5,000 people or 10,000 people in a stadium all across the country. Come on now. It's still only June 17th. You could have been, boom, what a perfect scenario would have been. Everything in place June 10th. We're going to start training camp. We're going to start the spring training. Boom. We're going to start July 4th that weekend. Boom. America could celebrate and have baseball on July 4th. It would have been amazing. They just took an opportunity and flushed it down the toilet. And it's a real sad state of affairs for baseball ownership, the players. And really, it's a situation where the players are going to be like, well, if you're losing money, show us. And the owners are like, we're losing money and we're not going to show you. So both parties don't trust each other and they're not negotiating in good faith. And everybody's sitting back going, you guys are an embarrassment. And that's why, when we look at stuff like this, the owner should, if you're going to claim you're losing money, then you got to show it because the players absolutely don't believe you. And when you're signing deals like this, and when you have the players that are openly tweeting saying, hey, we don't believe you're losing money. And really at the end, everyone kind of knows what's happening. The owners want to take more money by instituting a cap. They don't want to pay out $200 million for a team salary. They say, okay, if we can if we can get a cap in place, if we can finagle, if we can work towards it, we can now even make more money.
This is the thing. We're setting up because next year their CBA expires.
Yes.
And we're setting up for all of this all over again. So you want to talk about taking hits instead of doing some good work and laying a foundation for coming to the table next year to negotiate. The Major League Baseball has screwed everything up because the players don't trust the owners don't trust the players. And what's going to happen next year, we might have another baseball strike. I know this network bags on hockey quite a bit. We make jokes about it a lot. But you know what? At least hockey was able to get out in front of this and put together a plan where they were able to include 24 of the best teams in the league to go and do a round-robin style tournament to play for the Stanley Cup. Major League Baseball had a ton of time to lay out what could be a shortened season and still have your classic come October, maybe stretch it into November and still be able to play baseball. Yet you screwed it all up. Your PR looks bad. You're just all of Major League Baseball looks like a bunch of ass clowns because you can't have owners out there doing what is right and doing the proper thing. And look, I'm going to side with the players all day long on this because the players came out and they said they negotiated in good faith. They said, yeah, we're willing to take a pay cut. We're willing to do this. We're willing to play baseball. And really and truly, if anybody's going to get impacted by this or get COVID, it's going to be the players. It's not going to be the owners who are sitting up in their luxury boxes. You know what I'm saying? With their family and their friends popping bottles. It's not going to be those guys. It's going to be the guys on the field scratching and clawing. I am so disgusted with baseball. And you and I have talked about this before. We are a little bit older. We grew up watching baseball. We're fans of baseball. I see you post the videos of you playing baseball with your nephew. That's how much of a fan of baseball you are. There is an entire segment of the population coming up behind us that has no cares for baseball whatsoever. Doesn't even understand the game, doesn't even want to be bothered with any of the nuance of it. And it's baseball's fault. It's all baseball's fault. It's nobody else's fault. It's just baseball's fault. And you know what? Next year, you're going to do even more harm to your reputation because you're not going to be able to get a CBA done, and you're probably going to go on strike again next year. And it's all going to be over dollars. Yeah, it's stupid, man. It's really stupid.
What do you think of expanding the playoffs this year alone?
I don't necessarily think you should adjust your playoff structure, especially if you're going to play a season, right? Or what is going to be deemed a season. You play a 60-game season. I don't think you necessarily have to expand your playoffs. You don't have to bastardize your playoff system just to try to get something fit in. You know what I'm saying? Look, at some point, I just want a season I don't care if it's 40 games. I don't care if it's 50 games. I don't care if it's 60 games. I would prefer it to be at least 80. I don't think you need to expand your playoff to 16 teams. That's not necessary at all. But look, just get something done. Don't have an empty season. Just don't do that. Like I think it's important for both basketball and for hockey to have their playoffs, to have whatever they've got to do, because their seasons were stopped dead in the tracks, right? And they had played roughly 3/4 of their season. So I think it's important for them to figure out some type of way to be able to go into their playoffs regularly. As far as baseball goes, if you want to adjust it because you're going to have a shortened season, fine, whatever. Just have a damn season. That is all that is important to me right now.
Absolutely. And baseball, please you can even take a lesson from soccer that started already. I mean, figure it out. The model is there. Get back at it, make people happy, and labor disputes. Remember, the last strike that took place in 94, you then had to wait a couple seasons while you recovered, and the only reason why you recovered was the steroid era with Mark McGwire and Sammy Sosa. If that didn't happen, you were looking at a sport that potentially was going to have some major problems. And in 2020, with people's lack of attention span, with kids going to esports, with everything going online, the digital age, if you don't catch the attention of young fans and create new ones, then you're going to have a sport that's going to have a bunch of 50 and 60-year-old fans going forward, and that's not growth. That's going to be a major hindrance to Major League Baseball going forward. It's a great sport. Obviously, you got Vito out here making videos saying where and when. Come on now, baseball, get your head out of your asses and figure it out. It's just not right. And obviously, at this point in time, hopefully, whatever decision is made between both parties, the negotiation that's going to take place with the CBA hopefully results in a much better negotiation than it did during the pandemic. A big fat F to all parties involved, in my mind. All right, let's switch gears and talk about something that we always enjoy here on the podcast, and that's what fans and how our supporters definitely take in information. It's really great because the hot button topic that really gets people riled up, and I love, because I love doing it, on our Twitter page at Detroit Podcast, is just kind of exploring. And I put a piece on SIL Lions where I said, look, there's a backup out there. There's a player who potentially should be a backup at this point in his career, 31-year-old Cam Newton. He hasn't been signed, and I know he wants big money, and what people are saying is potentially he's waiting for a quarterback to go down, and then he'll glom onto a team. Or maybe a team like the Patriots, Steelers, team like that has a veteran quarterback that's willing to take him, could potentially sign him. So I said, hey, I'm all for Cam. I think that he could potentially fit into this offense with Darrell Bevell, who's worked with Russell Wilson. This would be great. Make him an offer of $5 million. Hell, at least make an offer. If he's not going to take it, if he wants starter money, then you can come out and say it. But the Lions operate in the veil of secrecy where we don't know if they've made an offer, made a call. You never know because you hear from the general manager once or twice a year. So I said, you know what? Let's just put a bold opinion out there. Go out and get him. Go out and sign Cam Newton. Here's why. Potentially we're in a pandemic. Stafford, hopefully not. Stafford, Blau, Chase Daniel could potentially get sick all at once. All three in the same room. Boom, could be out. You have this guy, Cam Newton, he's better than David Blau. You put David Blau on the practice squad, and boom, he's done. And then the reactions came. Oh, no. The best reactions I think I sent you, and you saw it too, was the ones that were like, bro.
David Blau's good.
David Blau's good.
Great in the room.
Chase Daniel's great. What a wonderful addition. Offensive coordinator Darrell Bevell was asked that today. I almost laughed in the Zoom meeting. I had to kind of turn my head a little bit because he was espousing how great Chase Daniel is and all the experience he brings to the table. I almost started laughing because it was a team. I think it was a team reporter question asking that kind of silliness.
Of course it was.
Yeah.
Tory, what is it, Petrie or Petrie or whatever?
It was, I think, one of the
Michael Hare.
Yeah, it was funny to espouse upon the wisdom of
Tim Twentyman.
Yes, we want to know about how great Chase Daniel is. Listen. Kaepernick is a different story, and we can debate that now or later. But Cam Newton, yes, he struggled and he's coming off of injury. As a backup is better than what you have. It's a fact. You can't argue, unless you're a fan, in any capacity that Cam Newton is not better than, you can't argue to us that Daniel and Blau are better than Cam Newton. You just can't. Dude, you can make the argument. You can make the argument that Cam doesn't want to come here. He wants to be a starter. That's fair. But to say that you'd settle for Daniel and that the Lions even gave him that money still pisses me off. But Cam Newton is a guy out there that if somehow or another would check his ego and accept a backup situation, you're only one snap away, Mr. Newton. You're only one snap away. You could be the starter of the Detroit Lions.
Let me put it like this, right? Because it is really, really simple. It's not that hard. And I think people overcomplicate things. Money's not really an issue for this team. They've got a ton in cap space, right? I mean, we were crucifying this team because they didn't go out and they didn't use the rest of their salary cap, and they need to upgrade their defensive line, especially at the edge position. But it's not that hard, right? So money's not a factor. So take that off the table. If Matt Stafford goes down, Matthew Stafford gets hurt, if he breaks his back again for the third year in a row, all right? Or if, let's just say, Matt Stafford gets the coronavirus and now he's suffering with COVID issues, and now Matt Stafford has to take an extended leave away from this team. You mean to tell me that you would much rather go into a game with a guy like Chase Daniels because he's good in the room, or David Blau because, hey, he's got young and he's got upside, or, I don't know, a guy like Cam Newton who's been there, done that, or a guy like Colin Kaepernick, who we've talked about before is an amazing athlete? I mean, if you ask me, if I had my choice between those four guys, Cam, Cap, Blau, or Daniels, I'm going to go with Cam Newton all day, every day. I know he's not the best passer. I'm firmly aware. I get it. But he would be working with an offensive coordinator who has ran a run option style before. Did it in Seattle. Did it with Russell Wilson, who I think is a better quarterback than both Cam Newton and Colin Kaepernick. But I think he could get more out of those guys instead of what you'd get out of Chase Daniels, who is a career backup, and David Blau, who at times looked okay last year, but I'm not willing to bet on him to get my franchise into playoff position. It just, don't overcomplicate these things, guys. Don't make it that much harder. Cam Newton is the better quarterback here.
Absolutely, and we're talking on Twitter. So you're arguing something that is funny on the surface level, where we're just making a hypothetical situation that potentially Cam Newton would be an upgrade over what you have. It's not that big a deal. It's no affront to Stafford. What we're saying is Cam Newton coming in would be better for the room than David Blau, would be better for the room than Chase Daniel, because Cam Newton has saw the football field. He's been on it. He's been in tough situations. He's played for Ron Rivera, who's won Super Bowls. So all that experience you're telling me you don't want? You don't want all that experience potentially to be in the ear of Matthew Stafford? Come on now. We're just talking online. So when fans say that, and actually, like I said, it makes me laugh because it's the ultimate sign of homerism. Adam and I are supporters of the Lions. We talk about them because we want them to win. And when you want the team to win, you want the best players. And when Stafford went down, the team lost every single game. David Blau and Jeff Driscoll were your backups, and the Lions went through 11 of them last year. They didn't find one that could win a football game. Okay? And so, and the one argument, though, I will give credit to a certain segment of fans that made this one argument. And it was very good. I liked it. Message us at Detroit Podcast. They said, look, Doc, if Stafford goes down, we don't want to win because we'll tank for Trevor. And I said, you know what? I can roll with that. If you believe that if Stafford goes down midway and you want to do it again so that you get the next guy next time with the number one pick, I'm all for it. I can roll with that. I can live with that argument. I can't live with the argument that you tell me Cam Newton, Kaepernick, 4 years away, you could argue that that's too much time away. But Cam Newton, come on now. He'd be fine in the room. He'd be great. And I think he'd be a positive addition, at least hypothetically on Twitter. Come on now. We're just talking about improving the team. Cam Newton would be great. And I do think, though, in his situation, he's just holding out. I don't think he'll sign until a team potentially has an injury to their starting quarterback. And it's likely to happen. There's 32 NFL teams, one hit away. I think Cam Newton's waiting to pounce and having the opportunity to cash in to make the most money, which is probably smart for him. But the days of him earning $20 million are probably over. If you can get him for 5 to 10 and you make that offer and he gets a little desperate, I think the market's being driven down. I think it's a great move, cousin. You and I are right in lockstep, and I agree with you. It just doesn't make no sense. You can't make a legitimate argument for not having Cam Newton if the opportunity's there.
Would you do this for Cam? Would you give him a deal where he was guaranteed $5 million, but it was a $10 million contract, but with incentives? So like if he played or if they got to the playoffs and he was the quarterback, it would go up to 15. Would you do something like that for a backup quarterback?
See, not after. See, the problem is you made the wrong move. You could have had Dalton or Newton. You made the wrong move by getting Chase Daniel. I mean,
Yeah.
you got a guy that's Stafford's friend, and that's what's happening. Everybody's scared of Matthew Stafford. Oh, let's not hurt his feelings. Let's not upset our perceived boy with the golden goose here. Let's not
This
upset
is
him.
an organization that has babied him
Yeah.
from day one.
For what?
From
Exactly.
day one.
It's not needed, not necessary, not earned. You bring in the best quarterbacks. I mean, just line up, guys. Go out there and just Google Matthew Stafford's backup, Dan Orlovsky, David Blau, Jeff Driscoll. There's not one that's a legitimate NFL starter. Not
Sean
one.
Hill was his best best competition. And Sean Hill, when he came in, he knew his role. He was like, cool, I'm the backup.
This is great.
Oh,
Exactly.
okay, cool, bro.
Exactly. For a decade now, going on 12 years, you've not had a legitimate backup. And then the best is they actually, when you ask about it, they just say, we have high confidence. They're great guys in the room.
Yeah.
Okay, that's just, okay. Thanks.
Tell me what guys in the room have won you.
Exactly, guys in the room that are great haven't helped out anybody at this point in time, and that's what it is. That other teams have invested a little bit more in the backup, and it's just it's a philosophical point that people have made, and I get it. That you would say, well, you know, you want to take that money and save it for a rainy day, or you got to allocate it for Kenny Galladay, but you're paying Chase Daniel a lot of money, $13.05 million over 3 years, man. That's a lot of money that you could have allocated in a different spot. So I don't know. It's one of those situations where those that are diehard fans of Stafford and the Lions organization, they plant their flag and they make their points known. They don't want any upgrade. Those that are supportive, they don't want an upgrade. We got Chase Daniel because they made it. Come hell or high water, he's our guy. When he steps on the field, guys, tune into Detroit Sports Podcast. We'll lay it out for you. We'll tell you how it goes. Definitely, when you start seeing 3 interceptions and 50 yards passing, we'll let you know how that turned out for you. Chase Daniel, he's great. You might be seeing Blau in there a lot faster than Daniel.
Look, I think Lions fans have really weird recollections of what they have here. So you got to see Chase Daniels beat you on Thanksgiving, and everybody's like, oh, Chase Daniels is a great quarterback. Cool. He beat your shitty team. Your team drafted number 3.
Right.
I mean, your team was bad last year.
You don't
Chase
go out and
Daniels
get him.
didn't do anything good.
You don't go sign him. They're like, oh, dude, he was good. Let's go get him. Let's go get him.
So sign him to a 3-year, $19 million deal.
Oh,
Good job, guys.
Good job. Solid. All right. Final topic. I'm gonna let you have the floor yet again because I'm gonna make my point. I'm gonna make my point very succinctly and very clearly. In regards to Jim Harbaugh, I believe that he was instrumental in the emergence of Colin Kaepernick. I believe that the decision that he made to go away from Alex Smith and to put Colin Kaepernick in the right position is unbelievable. He deserves a lot of credit. Now, you, on the other hand, last week started the discussion, and your belief is that he's overrated. He's not indeed a QB whisperer. Now, I understand those that will say that based on the fact that you haven't seen Shea Patterson develop and you haven't seen any quarterback at Michigan develop. But I'll say this. If Jim Harbaugh gets his hands on a quarterback with the caliber of talent that Colin Kaepernick had, that Andrew Luck had, I think that you have the opportunity to then take the next step forward to compete at the level with Ohio State. I think that Jim Harbaugh is taking a lot of heat at Michigan. Rightfully so. You have to defeat Ohio State. But I don't discount what he can do for quarterbacks. Shea Patterson had a ceiling, and damn near Jim Harbaugh got it out of him. He was highly productive. Now, was he good enough? Jim Harbaugh can't force Shea Patterson to make the open throws. Jim Harbaugh can't force Shea Patterson to stop fumbling the ball at the worst possible time. He went out and saw somebody that had talent and I think got him at least drafted in the NFL. And I think that to what degree you give him credit, that's something you're going to share. But I think that Andrew Luck is not in the NFL without Jim Harbaugh. Colin Kaepernick's not playing in the Super Bowl within one game away in some freaky light situation in the stadium away from a championship without Jim Harbaugh. The guy has experience. I think what he brings to the table, in my mind, is the ultimate gamer. Not the most talented quarterback, but the guy that was in the room learning, competitive. I think he has the psychological wherewithal to get the most out of guys. What Jim Harbaugh has to do is he's got to come hell or high water. He's got to get his Trevor Lawrence. If he gets a guy with a little bit more talent, just a little bit, and you might have it in McCaffrey and Milton. You never know. If the talent is there and it meets Jim Harbaugh, you're going to have potentially a national title contending program at Michigan. You're that close. I know that you guys are looking at high goals and losing to Ohio State stinks every year, and Ohio State's lapped the field in the entire country. So the whole country's trying to chase after what they got going on. But I do believe that Jim Harbaugh has the ability to take quarterbacks to the next level with what he's got going on. Shea Patterson's not getting an opportunity with Kansas City without Jim Harbaugh. Now you got to go out there and get that guy. You got to recruit the next big thing, whether it be someone like an Andrew Luck or someone that has a little bit more shiftiness. I'm interested to see which one of the guys, because it's right there on your team, Milton and McCaffrey, to what degree who's going to win out that job. But I think that, in my mind, Jim Harbaugh deserves ultimate credit for being the QB whisperer.
So what's the problem with Harbaugh then? Is it just that he's not recruiting the right guys? Does it come down to recruiting? Is that what the issue is? Because in my estimation, Andrew Luck was going to go pro no matter what. Andrew Luck was an extremely talented college quarterback. Andrew Luck was an extremely talented NFL quarterback. Andrew Luck was the total package. Jim Harbaugh maybe made some tweaks. If you want to give him credit for Colin Kaepernick, I give him credit for making a very tough decision because Alex Smith was your quarterback. Alex Smith got injured, and then it was upon Jim Harbaugh to make a tough decision on whether or not you give your starting quarterback his job back. What he realized was, hey, I've got a guy who is incredibly explosive and can do a lot more because he's a very dynamic athlete. I think we go with him because he's going to give us our best chance to win because he is a dual threat at quarterback. So I think he just made what was kind of a no-brain decision. It was a tough decision, but I think it was a no-brain decision to go with Colin Kaepernick. Now you look at what is going on here at Michigan, and do you want to say that he got the absolute best out of Jake Rudock? Cool. What happened with Wilton Spaeth? Because you got nothing there. I mean, you want to talk about what happened last year. Last year was a complete and utter disaster with Patterson. It wasn't good at all. You know, if you could probably make the case that Patterson regressed last year instead of moving forward and exemplifying some of the talents that he had. Because, shoot, we talked about it. This was supposed to be a guy who was going to be a Heisman-type candidate. This was going to be a guy who was going to come in and help revolutionize this offense and take it to that next level. This was Jim Harbaugh's guy. And you know what we got? We got a lot of fumbles. We got a lot of interceptions. We got a quarterback who looked really out of place. We had a quarterback who sat there and was able to beat bad teams, barely. And we had a quarterback who sat there and lost some of the biggest games in blowouts. Jim Harbaugh wasn't whispering any sweet nothings in anybody's ear. I think Jim Harbaugh gets a lot of credit, gets a ton of credit for guys who were really, really good and guys who were great athletes. Because when you look at guys who are just guys, he really hasn't done anything with those guys. I mean, Patterson, cool. He got invited, wasn't drafted. He got invited to a tryout with Kansas City. We'll see if he makes the team. He's probably going to be a practice squad player. That's going to be it. Jake Rudock got drafted by the Lions, and he bounced around the league for, 2 years, maybe 3 years, and then he was gone. And then after that, it really comes down and comes back to Andrew Luck, who was fantastic, and Colin Kaepernick, who was a sick athlete. That's his claim to fame.
I think that you guys are close. I think that Jim Harbaugh's close. He needs basically a 10% better version of Shea Patterson to win. I think you just needed the guy that can make the key throw, make the key play late. Shea Patterson's accuracy was decent against the bad teams, but when it counted most, he shriveled up and couldn't hit anybody. He started making all the errors. So you can't sometimes dictate and control how a quarterback responds when the lights are the brightest. And if you guys find that guy, I think Jim Harbaugh is the right coach to get him over the hump. You got to find that right guy. And absolutely, you said it when we intro the topic. It's about recruiting. You guys got two now. I don't know. Give me the sense. Give me the 4-1-1. Are you guys high on McCaffrey and Milton? Who's in the lead? Who are the message boards, or what's the tea leaf saying? Who's got the edge at this point in time?
In my estimation, I think McCaffrey is probably your best bet. He's probably your best version of what Colin Kaepernick was for that 49ers team, right? The only issue with McCaffrey is he constantly gets banged up. He can't stay healthy. Right. He can't take a big hit. When he gets hit or he gets popped, he's down and then he's out. He's out. And he misses games. It's not like one game. He misses games. So unless he's going to hit the weight room extra hard, and again, when you hit the weight room and you're a quarterback, it sometimes messes with your throwing motion. But at some point, he's got to bulk up or add a little bit of weight so he can take those pops because he's a little bit too slight. And I'm not really sure what his estimation on Milton is. I have no idea. You know, I mean, Milton could be good, but I've only seen him in garbage time, and I've only seen him do a couple things. I think McCaffrey's had the best showing when he's been given a shot, but again, when he takes a shot, he's not showing anything. He's on the ground. So I don't know. That's part of my problem with Jim Harbaugh in Jim Harbaugh with his quarterback position is I don't think he's done a good enough job either getting the talent here and then when he gets the talent here, developing it. That's why I don't believe he is a QB whisperer. I think he is a guy who totally took advantage of Andrew Luck when he was at Stanford. And I think he's a guy who got put in a weird position in San Francisco, but was smart enough and had enough fortitude to make the decision to go on Colin Kaepernick. Ooh. The issue becomes after that, what have you done? What have you done for me lately? You've done a whole lot of nothing.
Okay, interesting. Let us know on our Twitter page at Detroit Podcast who gets more of the blame for Michigan's struggles, at least on the offensive side at the quarterback position. Is it Jim Harbaugh's fault, like Adam says, or is it the talent, the quarterback's fault, the player that actually steps on the field, like I believe? Let us know on our Twitter page at Detroit Podcast. A real interesting debate. Definitely, though, whoever's at fault, it has to be corrected because at this point in time, if Ryan Day stays at Ohio State, if he doesn't get that next level job, he's poised, to put his foot on the gas and blow by everybody in the Big Ten, including Jim Harbaugh. You could have a situation where, and back in the day, 5 years ago, if you had said Jim Harbaugh is going to go 0-5 against Ohio State, everybody would laugh at you and be like, ha, 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 yeah, stay on a podcast. But now we're 5 years later, he still hasn't won, and Ryan Day is bringing in unbelievable talent year after year and is recruiting at a high level. He's only taken that program to the next level. So if you're not careful, if you're not keeping up, you don't get that quarterback, you don't figure it out, you don't improve your coaching, Ohio State and Michigan might not ever, in Jim Harbaugh's tenure, defeat Ohio State. It could happen. 6, 7 years, 3 more years, you would think that Ohio State's got good talent. You may luck into one, but it's not out of the realm of possibility that Jim Harbaugh never, as the coach of Michigan, defeats Ohio State. It could happen, and that thought should enter your consciousness and send shivers up your spine because that quarterback position, running back, 2 very important positions for the Michigan offense, and it just hasn't been solved as of yet, and it doesn't look like it as of yet, and especially now with COVID and the lack of time that they're going to spend, oh my God, this is going to be horrible for supporters of Michigan, but always interesting debate. I like it. I like these kind of sports debates where we take 2 different sides, and it's really a little bit of both, in the end, because Jim Harbaugh has to do a better job overall coaching, but I think he's done a really decent job in my mind in terms of how he's handled the quarterbacks. But let us know. Follow Adam on Twitter at AdamRSTROZ. Make sure you wish him a great happy birthday week. He's another year older. He's still at it, so wish Adam a happy birthday. He's had himself a good week. Follow us on Twitter at Detroit Podcast. Make sure you go and subscribe to the Detroit Sports Podcast. Anywhere that you decide to go and listen to your favorite podcast, just type in 3 words, Detroit Sports Podcast, and when you subscribe, our daily content finds you, where we have a Michigan podcast, we got a podcast that lets it rip like Doc and Jock, we got a baseball podcast, we got a wrestling podcast every Friday, Adam's got 2 more podcasts, a podcast where he's going back and reliving all the nightmares of the Detroit Lions in the 2012 NFL season. He's already, go back and listen to episodes of the Throwback where he relived the 2011 season. They're right now heading into, I believe, this week, weeks 3 and 4 of 2012. Good stuff there, cuz. Look forward to talking to you next week on the next edition of Doc and Jock.
Absolutely, sir. And this is going to be a good week on the Throwback. Check it out on Sundays around 1 o'clock.